Welcome to Foot by the Foot podcast. I have So and Kim, also known as Mr. Kim, also known as SoSo. Welcome.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
How's everything going? How's I see different setting. I know you're a big time traveler. Where are you at now?
I'm in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. A little bit of a time difference, as you can see behind. It's
Yeah.
nighttime. It's about midnight over here. But yeah, I've been in Cambodia for about a year and a half. This is my second season out here, and it's been great so far.
Talk to me about your journey. I know obviously a lot of people don't know your background, but you grew up in the sporting Kansas City setup in the academy. Made the move from there, went to Duke, transferred to USB. Talk to me about like your experience as a youth soccer player.
Yeah, it was interesting. Anytime I tell my story, I start off by prefacing that my older brother and my father were the ones who were really into football. And I was just kind of the younger one there, just following everything that they did. And I kind of strapped up the boots maybe when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11, and I started to play locally. And everything happened pretty fast. I didn't really have an end goal with it. And fortunately, I got scouted to do ODP. I don't know if people watching now even know what that is, but back then, before all the academies and all the glitz and glam, we had to go through trials at state, and then it goes to regionals, and that's ultimately how you get to the national team. And back then, we had the residency program down in Florida. So I found myself kind of in that selection process because the coach thought naturally that I'd be fitting. And I made it all the way to the national team camps. And then, of course, I grew up in Kansas City, and locally that kind of caught wind. And so I was approached by the club. I think then I realized how big it was, a big of an opportunity. And I kind of stepped into the professional world at a professional club. I think I joined when I was 13 or 14. And so I didn't really know what was happening at that age. But now that I reflect back on it, really football just became my life. And from 14 to about 18, I stayed in the academy. I was lucky enough to train with the first team, which was invaluable. And I even made my debut with the reserve side. I think I was 15 or 16. And that's basically where I got my education. And it was football 24/7, I think. Yeah.
How was it being a young player playing for Peter Vermees? What was that? Did you have a lot of interaction with him? I've heard a lot of stories in Kansas City about that kind of whole excuse me that environment. What was that like? It was a little probably uh, in the peak of when Sporting Kansas City was good. Was it even Sporting
Mm.
Kansas City, or was it still the Wizards at the time?
No, that's interesting you said that because I joined when there was Kansas City Wizards, very retro. And then my first year thereafter, they did the whole revamp and the rebranding. So I was there during that transition period when we changed to Sporting Kansas City. So yeah, I got a year. That shows my age, man. I had a year. I had a year in Kansas City Wizards, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went on to play at Duke, and then you made a big change. Went to UCSB. Obviously,
Yeah.
two very top programs, two very good schools. What was the difference between Duke, UCSB? Obviously, very varying styles as well. Uh, East Coast being probably a little more physical, a little more direct, but uh, the ACC generally does produce good programs. And then you go to UCSB, a program that they like to play. Um, Super cool atmosphere. I don't believe they have a football team, so a lot of emphasis on the soccer program there. What was that like?
Yeah. And just real quick before I answer that, just with the whole, Sporting Kansas City and Peter Vermees thing, it's kind of fresh on my mind these days. I was actually thinking about my whole journey with them because they actually turned over the entire club. They actually even sold it after, I think, 15 years, dude. Vermees was a bit distanced from me, but I think it was almost like tough love. Had a lot of grit. He had a lot of standards, and he expected a lot of the players. And at the time, I couldn't quite process it. Because I almost felt like there was a target on my back where I was constantly trying to prove myself and nothing was good enough. But I look back now and I think it made me a lot tougher. And at the end of the day, they gave me the opportunity to, have a experience of a lifetime that not a lot of people can say that they had. So, yeah, I think in the moment I could have appreciated a little bit more, but now I think they're revamping a lot of stuff. But that was certainly an era. I think like 2011, 12, 13. I think they won the cup and the league and all these things, and so there's definitely history, and there's a lot of players that I could kind of role model myself after. So
Yeah,
it
it,
was
it's in,
definitely
it's interesting you say that you realized now you're realizing what was given to you when when you had that you had when you were younger. I feel the same way. I feel like you don't really understand what you have when you're in the moment. Even when I was at playing with New York Red Bulls, like being able to
right.
play for Jesse Marsh, Chris Armas every day, even the head coach for the second team, John Wolniak. You don't really realize what you have in your hands, and you're always constantly putting pressure on yourself. But now, when I talk to younger players and they're in that kind of environment, I try and encourage them to just enjoy the experience. I think you you have to enjoy it to be able to play your game.
Mm.
And when you're overthinking other factors of trying to impress somebody, you kind of move away from who you are as a person. And those top coaches, that's what they look for, you know.
Yeah,
And
I think in
that
those
that
moments, yeah. Go
that's what
ahead, sorry.
ultimately opens the doors for players, you know. Um, so I don't know if you feel the same way about that.
No, no, I definitely do. I think it's there's that cliche saying that we always got as youth players, like, really soak in the moment, this time doesn't last forever, and you're kind of thinking in your head, oh, this old guy, he's living in the past or something. But no, it's absolutely true. I was going to training and I was getting to attack against Bat Beasler and Graham Zusi, who went to the World Cup for the United States. And sometimes I think to myself, if I immerse myself a little bit more and I was just kind of picking these guys' brain and also trying to study what allows them to get to that level, I think um, maybe I had more opportunity, more of a shot to become an MLS player, And you see kids these days, and I try to tell them the same thing. I try to encourage like the younger generation to, really, really live in the moment. But that's hard, even for us today, being 30. Like that's something that I push and challenge myself to do. And so obviously it's an ongoing process and journey. But certainly these kids have a bigger platform. They have more resources and more to consume. And I think if they have the right leadership and the right guidance, they can end up anywhere. So I think.
Crazy question for you. Were
Hmm.
you there when Chad Ochocinco was there? When he did
That
his
was actually my hey, shout out Chad.
yeah.
Because Ocho Cinco was actually really cool to me. The first thing he said to me, or actually when he went in the locker room, he was like, "Guys, I'm really happy to be here. In another kind of like major league, locker room. Everyone's about, the same age." He looks at me. He's like, "This kid's got to be 11 years old." And everyone starts laughing. I'm this kid, like super shy, and no, it was great, but I was there. It was my actual debut for the reserve team, and I was kind of bittersweet moment because I was thinking this is my shot to show Peter and Kerry Savagnin and all these guys what I can do and implement it in the game, and then there's a million cameras and it's for Chad Ochocinco. He's playing right winger. I'm the right back. And I'm feeding him this ball, and he's making like wide receiver runs. I'm just like, okay, maybe this is not my debut. Maybe the next one. But yeah, it's funny that you
Yeah.
remembered that.
I remember watching the clips of him on his trial at the game. Obviously, I didn't know you at the time, but I remember this is so
Yeah,
awkward. I mean, clearly an athletic specimen,
yeah,
but definitely looked out of place. I mean, he's was probably the biggest guy on the field by far. Um, and it looked very unnatural. I mean, look, I think NFL players or even NBA players can transition to playing in the NBA no problem, but to go like straight from the NFL with no training, I know he claimed that he trained on the side, but no chance that you can easily step foot into an MLS pro. I mean, especially now, but um, no, that was funny. That was funny
No,
to
that was a
see.
great marketing move. I just remembered real quick, like on the bench. So we didn't start the game. We went in at like second half, and I think we got like 45 minutes. But he was sitting next to me. He just wouldn't stop talking about like McDonald's. And I was like, what's this? I don't know if you know that about his personality, but he loves McDonald's. He loves like saving all these things. He would look at me. He's like, hey, we go in, we ball out, McDonald's on me. And I'm thinking this guy's gonna offer me a steak dinner. He's talking about Happy Meals, and I'm like, dude, I'm not that young, but yeah, those are
Yeah.
some funny moments for sure.
Yeah. I got a homie down in Miami, and I don't know if you know, he's big on sending out messages on Twitch to play people in FIFA. And
Hmm.
my buddy just kind of shot his shot and invited him over. He ended up coming by his place. And the first thing
Yeah.
he did when he got to his house, he's like, "Where's your fridge?" And just raided his fridge. And then they ended up playing FIFA for 2 hours. Same kind of thing though. Super cool guy, super humble, super down to earth. But yeah, I mean, obviously had a stellar NFL career. And now he's living life. So um,
Yeah.
for sure. So obviously, kind of segueing back to Duke to UCSB, um,
Hmm.
what was what were kind of the differences between both programs for you? I think when we talked, it seemed for me like UCSB had more of an impact on the player that you are today.
Hmm.
But why did you make the change? Where did you feel like you thrived better?
Yeah. Um, so Duke, of course, it's in the ACC, like you prefaced. It's the East Coast. It kind of has that grit mentality, kind of, put up the numbers and we just train hard, we defend hard, all these things. And it was actually very much on par with Kansas City's ideology. So I was quite successful in my first 2 years there. I started as a freshman, and I think my freshman year, I scored a couple goals and had 5 or 6 assists, and everything was good, but the competitive nature on my side kind of was yearning for more. I know we kind of struggle with this every day, but the grass is not always greener on the other side. But this time around, I really had this feeling that I could be doing a little bit more, only because we were the only sport on campus that wasn't winning anything. And I'm not talking about just a winning record, but you see all sports on campus are winning trophies, and it kind of got to me. Uh, I had an agent at the time that was just consulting, and he was really pushing for me to go to a soccer specific school. At that time, I don't know if Duke's men's soccer at the time was just going through a drought because historically they have done well, and even in recent years they're doing well again. So maybe I fit into that pocket where a little bit of bad luck. UC Santa Barbara was very, very soccer focused. As you mentioned, that the football program was eradicated. I don't know when, but left Harder Stadium, which seated enough to have 20,000 fans, and it was local about soccer. Obviously, there's a massive Hispanic community in SoCal, and the player personnel was different, the style was different, and it was more of a style that I grew up watching. When my dad was teaching me football at a young age, of course, we watched like Korean national team, all these things, but he always turned on, you know, Spanish football, Mexican football, Brazilian football. He really enjoyed the artistic side of playing. Obviously, you have to kind of combine those two when you become a professional. So I think that chapter that really, really allowed me to kind of curate my personality on top of the professional standard and the foundation that I got from like a place like Kansas City and Duke, where hard work and discipline is number one, which I agree to. And so the combination of having 2 years at each program, I think, is really shaped me. And at the time, I don't know if you felt the same way during your playing career, but I didn't really want to play college. I could have stayed at Kansas City for a little bit longer. They actually asked me to stay another year to see if I can break through with the first team, but I wanted to try something different. Of course, coming from a Korean background, education was also a priority. And so I think those 4.5 years, stepping away from Kansas City and kind of pushing myself and, putting myself in uncomfortable situations. You're living away from home. You kind of have to figure it out. There's 30, 40 different personnel in the locker room and a new team, as you know. And so you develop kind of personal skills outside of football. So I think as a whole, it was the most pivotal moment for my life and my career.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I wasn't fortunate enough to play in an MLS academy, but I always try to find ways to challenge myself as a player. Obviously, going to Shattuck, moving away from home as a junior, going into my junior year of
Yeah.
high school, I always tried to push the boundaries and challenge myself. I think the game has changed. I think the young players now that are in the MLS environments, even MLS, the non MLS teams, you have a different kind of platform. And the amount of scouting that's done now is increased hundredfold. And the opportunities are there. Obviously, you have to perform, but, um, you know, the sky's the limit now. I think when we were growing up, pre-Pulisic. For me, Pulisic is the kind of the biggest player in U.S. soccer today, just because he opened the door for players to go to Europe. There's so many leagues, so many between top flights all the way down, and different experience. Even a country like Australia, for example, we have friends that went to go play there. It's not technically professional, but you still get paid enough to live, and the experience is cool as well. So, yeah, no, definitely having the being able to experience different things is awesome. So, um, you finished your time at UCSB. Uh, what was the transition like from college to the pros? Did you go through an agent? I know you're a guy that's you like to dig, you like to find opportunities everywhere. What did that transition look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's actually a crazy story because I ended up in Malta in the Premier League there, just quickly. But before that, I didn't really have thoughts in my head to go overseas right away. I kind of still had this infatuation with making it as a MLS player. And so naturally, I wanted to just join another MLS club. During my senior year, when I was captaining UCSB, I was contacted by a decent sized agency and they wanted to discuss about me getting drafted. And at some point right before my senior year, I actually got a trial at NK Istra in the Croatian top flight. I don't know if they're still up there now, but I went there and the agent was actually pretty infuriated. I don't really know why, but he kind of took that as, okay, we're not going to work together. And I kind of took a gamble, a shot. And I went on trial there. And it was the whole thing of you can sign here, but then you're going to go on loan to second tier in Croatia. And I was like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. So I came back and I finished my senior year. It was underwhelming. And I can admit that it just, for UCSB standards, it just wasn't good enough. We didn't really do much. The year before, we made it to the Sweet 16, and we were the only team to beat Stanford, the champions, that year when they went on this crazy run, or 3 years when they went on a crazy run. And so I was kind of stuck and I was like, what am I going to do? And I was lucky enough and fortunate enough that Orlando City scouted me. And so I got excited again. They offered me a contract with the B team and I signed a pre-agreement. I celebrated with my family only to find out a month later on Twitter that they folded. So I wasn't even contacted directly. I found out on Twitter, messaged the director at the time, and I said, surely this is a mistake. And he didn't respond for 2 or 3 days. And by the way, I have a good relationship with this guy, and um, it was I don't think it was his fault. It just was communicated poorly. But long answer short, yeah, the premature party came to an halt, and then Orlando City was not fielding a B team, and so I kind of had to move on. I went in, and he allowed me to train with Orlando City's, like kind of the reserve players to prepare. And like you said, I was digging around a little bit. I had some older like friends of mine from Duke, Sebastian and Christian Ibiaga. I don't know if that rings a bell. But those brothers were always nice to me, and they kind of gave me this, set me up with the agent who gave me this opportunity to play abroad in Malta, and so I took it. I just was kind of fed up with how the events kind of turned out to be in the United States, and I just wanted to kind of start fresh and go for it. So immediately after Santa Barbara, I kind of hopped overseas to Malta.
What's Malta like?
But honestly, I didn't know too much about it until I looked it up, and obviously it's an island south of the coast of Italy. Great people, amazing culture, beautiful place. And the league was interesting at the time. This was 2018. Obviously, the league surrounded itself of the quality of foreigners that they bring in, much like a lot of leagues over in that area. So some teams were, I was like, wow, this is levels, and then some teams I'd play and say, I think my college team might have been better. So there was a massive gap, but the top three teams could really, really play. Even on my team, there's guys who previously played in the, the reserve side of Juventus and Napoli and all these things. So there was quality in it. But I think the experience as a whole, just finally being able to breathe and say, you know, I got my professional contract now. It's kind of time to put up or shut up. So overall, it
Yeah.
was a great step for me, I think.
What was the adjustment like? Obviously, you went from UCSB, packed stadium. Everyone looked forward to the games on the weekends. Obviously, you did have success, even if it wasn't success under your merit. But and now you go to
Mhm.
Malta, where uh, maybe far from that kind of environment. I felt
Yeah.
the same way going from Creighton to my first deal in Sweden, where I went from playing in a for a Oktoberfest game against SLU with 6, 7, 8,000 people to go in a stadium of 300 people,
All right.
no atmosphere. What was that like? What was the adjustment like for you?
Yeah, it was difficult, obviously mentally. As you said, Santa Barbara, I think our biggest rivalry game, we clocked in at 16 or 17,000. I was fortunate enough where Santa Barbara was a bit of an outlier and an anomaly in American soccer, but we had those types of atmospheres and fan bases. And then I hop over to this tiny island in Malta, and they actually all teams play in the same one or two stadiums. I think my first game, I was playing on this turf pitch with a little bit of a dim lighting. We played against Senglia, and I kind of looked up, and you can kind of pinpoint where people are sitting. And my teammates would make a joke, "Is like, oh, at least we have a couple dogs in here and some, you know." So it was, it was difficult, but I was so ready to prove that I could play professionally that I kind of like blocked out the noise. And I'm sure you've been in situations where you're just so tunnel vision and so focused, like you don't really have time to assess things on the outside, I just was in the grind mode with just push, 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 block out any noise. But I try to find the positives in it at the moment for sure.
What was life like in Malta? You're probably the only guy. I probably know maybe another guy or two. But what's life like in Malta? Was obviously it was not too hard of a transition from California to Malta in terms of the climate. But did you enjoy your time there? What was the nightlife like? What were restaurants, coffee shops? What was all that like?
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a huge part of the reason why I was actually able to adjust and have a decent season. I stepped in right away and I was able to start and kind of earn the trust of the local players and all that. But it's a complete island, so it's 100% island vibes. People are a little bit more relaxed. They don't take things too seriously, and you can always go to the waters. And their cuisine is very Mediterranean. Everything's fresh, and I think they're known for some of the biggest like fishing ports, I guess, and where they export it a lot as well. So these things, you know me for many years. I love culture. I love history. I love learning about different backgrounds and that. And so I think off the field, I was actually able to immerse myself and be stimulated enough where I didn't feel bored by any means. And I actually think it was one of my favorite places that I got to experience. And life was good. Life was easy. Um, but again, at the same time, I was so young and hungry. I don't think I quite allowed myself to enjoy it as much as I would now, if that makes sense.
Sure, sure. I think you're
Yeah.
you're definitely fortunate enough to end up in a country like that. I ended up my first contract. I left school early. Ended up in Borlänge. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Borlänge Fallen region in Dalarna in Sweden, and there was not a whole lot to do. And I got there, it was March, and it was cold. There was not a lot of stuff going on. A couple restaurants.
Mhm.
Stockholm was the closest big city to where I was, and that was about a 3-hour train ride. Um, my struggle as a player was we train in the evening, everyone worked in the morning, and I didn't know what to do with my time during the day. Obviously, you can't work
Yeah.
another job. And um, I think that's a big struggle as a pro. If you end up in an environment where you can't find yourself there and find a life outside of playing, you kind of get stuck in your own thoughts.
Hmm.
So I think that was great for you to have that experience. And you were there for 2 years, year and a half.
No, actually, I was there a lot shorter than I thought. So I signed the 1 year and I had the opportunity to stay longer. But again, it comes back to this whole, this pattern of me gunning for more and just wanting more and wanting to challenge myself. So I left the Czech Republic, short of just 1 season, actually. And at the moment, it looked like the right move, but I can confidently say it wasn't. Um, I can I can admit to that now, and I don't know. I think Malta was a good stepping stone because it was first year in Europe, and a team like Hamrun right now, they're even qualifying for Europe and all these things, and so it could have been a great platform for me. I think going back to what you were saying, I think it's more than half the battle to find yourself within a country and kind of get acclimated and start to see yourself being able to live there longer term. It allows you to build patience and the mental strength that you need to really fully focus on football. Um, I think I was lucky that there was like, I don't know, I think there was 9 or 10 Japanese players on other teams and some on my team here and there. And we kind of built a little like, community and you can look forward to things outside of footy. And Malta was known for like the Hawaii, I guess, of Europe. And so there was a lot of tourists. I even met a lot of Americans and all that. And so life was good. I can't lie.
You jumped to Czech Republic. Maybe not the best move in terms of your soccer career, but
Mm.
I'm a believer. And obviously, as you know, you meet people in the game, and you come to Czech Republic, you meet Drew Connor.
Yeah.
If I'm correct, right? I think that was your
Yes.
first time meeting him.
Yes.
Obviously, he's you. The both you guys have collaborated on a lot of things uh,
Right.
outside of soccer, in soccer as well. I mean, you ended up at Chicago House through Drew. So talk to me about his influence on you, getting to know him. What's he like for the people that don't know
Yeah.
Drew Connor, Chicago legend? Shout out Drew.
Yeah. Shout out Drew Connor, Mr. Connor. If there's anything I can take away from my stint in Czech Republic, which career wise, it was a nightmare. It was the wrong move, but I show up from an American agent. I don't even know if I can call him an agent, but somehow he finessed the ability to get me, Drew Connor, and Ahinga Salamani, who was a youth international player for USA, played at UMich. He also played in the all over the world. But anyway, I show up to a small town in Czech Republic called Vlašim, and I enter this kind of apartment building. I see a long-haired, swaggy white dude with some headphones on, some sambas on. He goes, "What's up, dude? I'm Drew Connor." I'm like, "I've heard a lot about you." I actually used to. I've seen some games, of him playing with Schweinsteiger and for Fire and all these things. And honestly, he made my time so much better in Czech Republic because him and I are very alike. Where we are eccentric. We like to express ourselves. We're creative off the field, and then when it comes to football, we love to play. But we're also not shy of hard work. So we connected and we built a bond really quickly. We're obviously spending every day together, and he was telling me a little bit about his journey, and I was telling him about mine. And in those situations, when you have someone like that in a foreign country, it means everything because it's almost having like a cellmate. You're like surviving in this place that you probably quite would not be able to do so on your own. But yeah, that was definitely a very very interesting time. And as you kind of alluded to, thereafter, many years later, I was able to come to Chicago and a whole different experience with you guys there. So it was a blessing in disguise. I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, you mentioned a bit about how you ended up in Czech Republic through somewhat of a phony agent. Talk to me about
Yeah.
your experience with agencies. What importance does that have in a player's career? Do you think it's something that you would recommend for a young player? Talk to me
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, I think it's everything, but I think what's pivotal in a young player's career or any player is having someone that you trust and they don't necessarily have the agenda, they just have your best interest at heart. And how can they map the short term, but more importantly, the long term goal? So obviously things happen that you can't control and you kind of have to pivot here and there. But in the big picture of things, the big scheme of things, the end goal has to be the same. And I think that's what I was missing. And I think that's what I got distracted by. When a lot of agents start to hit you up, it's distractions because maybe it sounds so great and then they're promising you all these things, and you start to kind of waver away from what your end goal really is. I think that's what happened in my scenario. Obviously, it's subjective in that moment, but if I stayed in a place like Malta, maybe 1 or 2 more years, had interest from teams that were, doing Europa League qualifiers, and they ended up doing quite well, and players moving on from that. And I kind of just took a premature move because someone kind of sold me a dream, and it's my mistake that I didn't look too far deep into it and kind of his history and what he's done with his work to even have merit to advise to another player. Football is our whole life, it moves fast as well, as you know. One wrong move, you kind of have to build up momentum again for a whole nother year or two, or maybe three, or maybe never. You see, players kind of folding and retiring after some bad moves. And so, to answer your question, I think it's monumental. I think it's the most important thing, but not necessarily having an agent. It could be anybody. If it's someone close to you who's not necessarily licensed as a FIFA agent, but they can advise you in the best direction, I think that's more important than having just some agent that promises you some things. But on the flip side of that, I'm lucky enough now. I do have a FIFA licensed agent who kind of serves that role and that purpose of almost having a family member doing things, because I can genuinely tell that he wants the best for me, and he's questioning things just as I am. So he's really on one side. I think there's so many agents out there these days that is just kind of seen as like numbers. Players are just numbers. It's almost like cattle, if you will. It's like if this player can cross off this criteria for this team, we're going to send them there. They don't care about anything else. So I think you need to have discernment. I think you have to, think for yourself. But if you can find someone along your journey that really has the best interest, then I think that's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, for me, coming out of college, I was represented by a bigger company, and uh, obviously, when you're represented by a bigger company with top players, they kind of can open your door for you. But then, you know, if you don't make them money, if you don't get that next big contract, you just become a number, and you kind of feel lost as well. I felt a little bit of that where I ended up having to do a little of the digging for myself and trying to find the right place because I didn't feel like, I would text my agent and maybe wouldn't get a response in a day, two, maybe even a week. And it was like, does this person care? And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You genuinely don't know. But I did make a move at a certain point with a smaller guy in Israel, and the experience was so much better. I was at the time when I was in Israel, I was able to go meet up with him, talk about the issues I was having. And I agree. I think it's almost like a mentor, and it's almost like a friend you can have that can help you through the mess, the good times, the bad times. And, but I felt like at a certain point in your career, if you're fortunate enough to make a career for yourself, play past 3, 4 years, you can kind of network yourself, you know,
For sure.
I would say the smaller leagues in the world, maybe not in the whole world, but in your own market, like in the US, it's not hard to find people on Twitter, on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and obviously don't be persistent young players and annoy these GMs and these head coaches. But, there is a way that you can also get your footage out there. And I don't know. Talk to me about your. I don't know if you went to any like open trials when you came out of college. I know they do a lot of the combines in the U.S. We're big on that.
Mm,
Some of them are money schemes, and some of them are genuine. I had a good experience with a combine when I came out of college. It was down in Fort Lauderdale, and ended up lucky. I got to work with Andy Williams, who at the time was the assistant coach with Real Salt Lake, and got invited to preseason through that. But talk to me about
mm.
open trials for young players. Does it make sense to go to one of those, or maybe hold off?
Yeah, I think these days there's so many of them, it's hard for me to assess. I haven't really been back to see what's out there, but more these days with social media becoming this, machine, obviously there's more, I don't know, I don't want to say like scam artists necessarily, because I'm sure there's agencies out there that do it just kind of more of like word to mouth. There wasn't really too many like paid open trial type of things. I certainly went on trials. I was with, Orange County, I was with Reno, I was with Sac Republic and all these things. And that was just me kind of finding opportunities. But I've never personally done kind of like a open trial or open combine. For me, I was just thinking about getting to the MLS combine, but that didn't work out. But yeah, these days I know there's a lot. I can't really answer to if they're effective or not, or if they're genuine. But I've seen players, get to certain clubs by just, hey, I'm strapping up the boots. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to pay this 150, 200, and they kind of get signed on. I think it's happened at Oakland. It's even happened at Sporting Kansas City back in the day with Kevin Ellis, who ended up having a great MLS career. And I know if I was a coach and I was a GM, and relatively I didn't really know this player, and he kind of bet on himself and showed up and balled out, and he was willing to kind of take those sacrifices, I have an inclination to give this guy more of a shot. And so I don't think I can answer if you should go for it or not, but always the underlining theme is to bet on yourself, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned Oakland. That's where I first met you.
Yeah,
I know you showed up well into the season, but what was Oakland like? Obviously, probably one of the coolest franchises, USL franchises in the US. Talk to me
for
about
sure.
Oakland roots. Talk to me about the branding, uh, the people that work there.
Yeah, first shout out Oakland Roots. Shout out the man Idris. That opportunity for the viewers was when I met your host David Abador. So it was obviously a pivotal moment. But no, Oakland was one of my favorite times. Obviously, COVID was difficult, and the landscape of football in the world was different. But just speaking purely on the branding side and what they were able to build with Oakland, it really inspired me. I kind of alluded to it before earlier on in this in the interview, but I like being creative. More on the artistic side, and the way they approached it is something that we haven't seen in the American landscape, I believe, where they were able to mix social media, fashion, the community as much as they did in a different way, where it's not just kind of the white picket fence, the mold. They were really going out of the comfort zone to really spark something. And I think there's a lot of clubs across the US, and not even just soccer teams, but other sports that have used Oakland Roots as almost like this model of the new generation of what a club can be. It's not just a club, it's more of like it's a movement, it's a statement, and a lot of people gravitate towards it. Now they have this crazy ownership group. You probably know better than I, but who's all involved? But it's something that's known, and they made a mark. And I think a really impressive feat that they had was it was what was it, like top 10 in America of merchandise that was sold or as popular. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I read something like that. But overall, Oakland was an amazing experience. I think they did a lot of things right to get to the point that they needed to get to. I think they have a pretty crazy evaluation now, but those things really stimulate my brain outside of football, and the way they were able to bring two of my favorite worlds together simultaneously. I just thought it was fascinating, and I think that's a testament to a guy like Idris, who was able to kind of make this and make it into fruition, I guess.
Yeah, no, for me, I feel the same way. And I was in Israel at the time. I just been released, and I was, bouncing around clubs trying to stay there and figure it out. And this was what, February 2019, and my agent at the time brought me this project, and I was like, Nisa,
Yeah.
let's talk about USL. What's NISA? Why would I go down to play NISA? And the more I talked to my agent, the more I talked to the club personnel there. The project really got me excited, and it was a good segue to come back to the US. And the momentum there, that you can feel it towards the end of the year. Obviously, we knew internally that we were going to go USL championship, and
Mm.
after we got back from the COVID restrictions, when we started training, and everyone, there's like a sense of, you got to prove yourself to try and make it with the USL team. Obviously, we had a great year. It was a lot of cool memories. I remember. I'll never forget our preseason trip down to SoCal. The month that we were there, the shenanigans, absolute jokes. But I remember you took me to Koreatown, took me
Hmm.
to some, like, nothing was not it, you the place we walked into, there was looked closed, looked like it had been closed for years. We walked downstairs, walked down a couple, walked through a door, walked through another door, and then it's like life. And this is like peak COVID. It was crazy. I mean, uh, different kind of experience. But I mean,
Oh,
obviously those memories of playing, those are the memories that I are most fond of my mind.
oh man, these.
No, I mean, Oakland was, as a whole. Obviously, I root for Oakland all the time. Obviously, Nana's still there. He's a roommate of mine. Shout out, Mr. Clement Atakora.
I don't
But
know
yeah,
where
you root
he's
for.
at though. He's hiding under a
I talk.
rock.
I talked to him the other day. He's busy. I got a hold of. I know he's probably the busiest guy in the world. It's
In
hard
the
to get a hold of the
world.
guy, but no, he's crushing it. The club's crushing it. Obviously, they've had a lot of changes, but you root for a club like that. You root for a group of people. I know it's a group of friends that started the club. Tommy was there. Uh, you know, good people at the end of the day, and you root for a group of friends that had a vision, and it's kind of coming to fruition. And you wish more of that for clubs in the US. I feel like a lot of clubs aren't as genuine,
Right.
and you want to, like, give back. And obviously, the community in Oakland's, they're built different there. So obviously, moving to play at the Coliseum, using the former Oakland Raiders facility, it's definitely a driving force to bring players there. And no doubt in my mind, I know they haven't been as successful as they wanted to be in the last few years, but success is coming for sure. So,
Yeah, no.
so you finish at Oakland. Obviously, Drew kind of got the band back together at House.
Yeah.
Um, I remember you came in on trial.
Yep.
CJ was like, poor CJ, man. I see him every day. It's funny. I tell him stories about our time playing together, and he had no
Oh
idea
yeah.
uh, what kind of misfits he had recruited to the group. But listen, we had success. We tried to play the way he wanted us to play, and at the end of the day, for the short stint House had as a professional organization, we did well.
Mm.
Talk to me about, like, Chicago. What's obviously, soccer side was cool playing at SeatGeek, but talk to me about Chicago. Talk to me about our locker room there. I feel like it was very
Yeah,
unique,
dude.
probably unlike any locker room you've been a part of. Definitely
You
for
know,
me.
I always say when people ask me about Chicago House and why I moved to Chicago, I say it's Netflix worthy. I think if we went to a board of writers and we talked about everything that we did, I don't know if we could air everything, but man, Chicago, like, even when I travel now, if people ask me, hey, where are you living, all these things, and of course I was raised in Kansas City, but I talk about Chicago quite a bit as if I was a native. But that's thanks to you guys. That's thanks to guys like Drew, Cause, you in there because he's St. Louis till he dies. But Oh no,
And then
dude. I think it
I'll,
was
I'm gonna pause you there for a second. I'll never forget
yeah,
Mateo got ruined. CJ had given us the freedom to wear whatever we wanted to games, and I'll never forget first game of the season, and Mateo shows up uh, decked out in St. Louis Cardinals gear, and everyone was like, I mean, we gave him a hard. I mean, we always gave him a hard time for. I mean, he was a rookie, gave him a hard time for being a rookie in itself, being from St. Louis, and then the fact that CJ took away that privilege for us, uh,
yeah,
just he instantly became the team punching bag.
yeah.
So
Which was inevitable, by the way, but he just kind of, fast tracked it by not allowing grown men to wear what they want on game day because this guy decided to wear St. Louis stuff on a massive project, by the way. I mean, you could attest to this. I think, of course, Chicago Fire, has their, clause on the city, but with Chicago House coming in and it being kind of spearheaded by a guy like Drew and you and people like Kaz who have so much influence on the city because you guys are born and raised there. You guys are Chicago, and a group of misfits, if you will, come together after an impressive career and start something fun. Almost like Oakland roots. It almost had that feeling. We were mixing in the community, we were mixing in the arts and the history and everything behind what Chicago stands for. Really, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And honestly, I feel privileged and honored to even be a part of that. And so shout out to Drew, shout out to you guys. And CJ and I, we had some scuffles, we had some arguments, but at the end of the day, even when I run into him, I thank him because he gave me one of the best experiences of my life, which was making a living in Chicago, being able to experience a city like that with some of my best friends and playing professional football was a dream come true, dude. It was uh, from the Midwest. I hear about Chicago. I went on official visits to places like Northwestern Loyola Chicago and all these things, but I didn't quite get it. And that's the thing that Drew would tell me when I was living in Czech Republic with him. This guy would not stop talking about Chicago. In my head, coming from SoCal, I'm like, it can't be that great. But Drew, you're right. It's amazing. It's a place that I visit every summer, every off season. I come there, I crash at Drew's and Causes, and I train with Chicago House still, who's still around. And yeah, it's by far one of my best experiences on and off the field, like together.
yeah, no, it was cool that you gave the shout out to CJ. I think obviously I work with him now every day, and he's not from Chicago, but it feels like he is. He's so pivotal in, I mean, first of all, in the fire organization. I mean, he's so helpful in terms of he's now overseeing like the young players coming through to the academy. He's in charge of our discovery centers, and then he's helping out wherever he could. And for me, obviously, a guy that's in the ring of fire, most cap player for the Chicago Fire in history, won championships. He embodies what the city's about. And for me,
Sure.
obviously, that was my last year playing, but he had a lot of influence on who I am as a coach today. And he definitely he lets you express yourself. He wasn't someone that kind of pigeonholed you and didn't give you the freedom, which I think is important as a player to thrive. And especially in the pro game, you see it now more than anything. But at the end of the day, the players have the power to overthrow a manager in the pro game. Maybe not at the lower levels because the money might be a little tighter, but if the players
Mhm.
aren't with the coach, they can they won't perform at their best. So, and I felt like CJ definitely extracted the best from everybody in our group, and we had our internal issues as a club, and you know the fact that we were able to stay together, made it so much worthwhile. And that's why we do have these memories from that moment. I think looking back on my career, that was it opened my eyes to the game. It wanted me to get into coaching, to give back to players that, unfair experience for us, getting cut short, playing only 5 6 months, but
Right.
enabled me to want to like provide the mentorship to players in those kinds of situations. So, um, no, for sure. So when you finish playing, is Chicago a place that you could see yourself settling down in?
Yeah, that's I think that's inevitable at some point in my life. I don't know when I'll stop playing, but Chicago definitely has a huge spot in my heart. I was honestly that summer when I first came in, and I was on trial for about a week. I want to say about a week or two. Drew wasn't quite sure if I would make the team, not because of my player ability, but because I know CJ wanted to bring in a lot of players who are more local, which I accept and I agree to. But Drew crammed in a Chicago experience, and I mean Chicago experience to its fullest within 5, 6, 7 days because he was worried that maybe I wouldn't get signed. And I said, I can always come visit, but that was out of his mind. And I mean, I had the greatest time of my life and I was still training every day. And luckily enough, I think after 10 days, CJ offered me a contract and I didn't even think pivotal because I experienced my first Chicago summer, and I think the timing of it was just absolutely insane. Of course, the later months of the snowing and all that stuff came, but yeah, Drew got me. Drew knew what he was doing. Drew, you knew what you were doing.
No,
Brought
for
me in
sure.
peak Chicago summer.
Yeah, no, we definitely live for the summer here. Obviously, this winter's been terrible, but you really you really learn to enjoy your time in the summer here.
Hmm.
Obviously, having the lake, being able to walk around. I mean, it's an amazing city if you haven't been here. So, listen, you made a crazy move. Crazy move. I remember we were sitting in Oakland, you were talking about it. Obviously, you come from a Korean background,
Hmm.
first generation, and you'd always had dreams of going to play in Asia. And I
Yes.
know it wasn't always working out for you. And I know after House, you didn't have anything. I know you were in Chicago, you were working on your own project, which we'll get to in a little bit, but um,
Hmm.
end up going over to Asia. Talk to me about that experience. And just to kind of like preface this for everybody, you don't have your Korean passport, so you do count as a foreigner there. What's it
Yes.
like? What's it like getting over there? I mean, for me when I think of playing in the Asian market, I think of the Wild Wild West. How did that all come to fruition?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I think Asia was a place that I really wanted to play my whole life. Obviously, I was born in South Korea and growing up in the States, all I really knew was kind of the American landscape of soccer. And I had dreams of playing in the K League, representing South Korea and all these things. And I didn't know too much about what was happening in the world or like politics and what have you. I have a Korean passport. It just expired 20 years ago. So with the ongoing war and just my family situation and all that, I actually went on trial with Suwon. I went on trial with Elan Seoul, and I was actually going to a U20 camp for South Korea, which all came to a screeching halt when they realized I couldn't hold two passports and I wasn't ready to give up my American citizenship because my parents spent their whole life working hard for that. And then ultimately I would have to go to the military. So I was a bit at a crossroads. I was frustrated because, there's times where if you're not appreciated or things aren't working out in one place, naturally you should segue in finding that. And so Korea was the first thing that I could think of. And year after year after year where I couldn't reobtain my citizenship, um, that dream almost seemed impossible. And for people who don't know, the Asian leagues are very heavy on, they put a lot of emphasis on the foreign quotas. Most of the salary goes there, but it's also capped at a certain number. And I'd say on average, it's about 5 or 6 foreigners can play on the field. You can sign maybe 7 or 8. Two of them have to be from Asia. One of them or two of them have to be from Southeast Asia. And so the true foreigners who come from Europe, Americas, etc., maybe you're looking at 3, 4 spots per team, which is highly competitive because, imagine the top players in the world who are kind of tapering down their career and they want to experience Asia for, good financial package. There's guys who played in, Bundesliga, EPL, all these things. I'm just like, it's not possible for me in this moment. But I was fortunate enough. I finished the trial at Vancouver FC in the Canadian League after I finished with Lexington in the USL. This is all after Oakland and all after Chicago. And I had a conversation with the owner of Life FC in Sihanouk, Cambodia. And this guy, Peter, who is now the GM of the Cambodian Premier League, his father owned the team in Life. And ultimately, they studied a bit in the United States and they have Korean background. And we were able to have a great conversation about how I could potentially join the team and make it a bit of a win-win situation. Quickly I prefaced to him that I didn't have an Asian passport, but he was willing to give me the opportunity, which I'm very thankful for to this day, sign me as a foreigner with my American passport. So I took one of the five foreign quotas and we talked it over for a long time with my family. I think we spoke maybe 2 months ongoing until we can finally come up with a deal that was everyone was comfortable with. And yeah, I flew over to Cambodia from Chicago. I think I was there at the time training, and yeah, the rest was history. I guess I haven't really left.
Yeah. And since then you've switched clubs?
Yeah. So what happened was that when I first arrived to Life, and Peter Koo, he ended up becoming the GM and the CEO of our league here, and he's done a phenomenal job in terms of marketing. I think Cambodia is probably one of the fastest growing leagues, just period. Based on he had an interesting interview where he was talking about oftentimes the football leagues and the entertainment in a country is correlated with the GDP and how the economy is doing. Um, in the moment, with war and their current state hasn't been great economically, but the football league has grown astronomically. And you can kind of see from the imports of the level of foreign players and who is investing in all these things. But I say all that to say is that when I first came, I didn't know too much. I didn't think too much. I didn't know how long I was going to stay. But after having a first year and I enjoyed the people and I had a successful year, there's a very historic club, which I play for now is Phnom Penh Crown. And they played in AFC competitions, like international competitions against A League teams, like K League teams, all these things. And so yeah, after my first season, I was able to have conversations with some of the clubs, which naturally happens if you're able to kind of break through. And over the summer, we were able to have some discussions, and it kind of went on hold a bit here and there. But ultimately, my agent was able to like kind of get it done, and I'm in a situation where we're fighting for the title of the league, obviously, and the FA Cup, and currently we're playing in AFC in the Challenge League. So we're doing international competition, which I'm here for now. And yeah, it's been a crazy ride, but yeah, it's been about 5 or 6 months since I've been.
I've seen many videos of games in the AFC. Haven't actually
Mhm.
caught a full game. It's not easy to get a hold of that, but talk to me about the stadiums. I feel like you're back to your UCSB days, but maybe on steroids there. I mean, a lot of people watching, fans. You know, you don't really, again, we don't really hear much about the Asian League here and the
Mhm.
culture. What's the soccer culture like there?
Yeah, I think this is something that I personally didn't even know too much about, especially in Southeast Asian football. I heard of players going to, Thailand or, maybe Malaysia or Vietnam, but they are football crazy over here. And you can show that in numbers by the viewership. In a place like Indonesia, I think they're getting 30, 40, 50,000 fans. And we did our group stage in Jakarta. Um, and the football fans there are do or die. And I think Indonesia is the most populated place on earth, like per mileage. And they are absolutely insane about their football, almost like hooligan esque, where they'll riot, they'll throw flares and all these things. And so, even neighboring countries are very passionate about their football. I think the community they definitely look forward to the matches, whereas maybe MLS has grown and there are like diehard fans, but I don't think you see too much of that on a large scale. Whereas Asian people, they're absolutely insane about their football. And the financial side of it as well is very shocking because when I was in the States, I almost felt like Europe is kind of the destination point, but you look at Asian football and how much is invested into it is absolutely crazy. We have a team here in Cambodia in the Premier League called Visaka, and I have a couple friends, close friends that play there. And maybe I can send you some, videos or photos, and you would think the stadium was in a Champions League, in Europe or something. It's absolutely crazy. And I don't know if you're familiar with Johor in Malaysia, but I mean, it's absolutely insane what we were ignorant to growing up of what is actually out there in different parts of the world.
Yeah, and I think the other beauty of it is, the cost of living is much much lower in that part of the world, and your salary maybe maybe you make what you'd make in the U.S., but your salary goes a far way there as opposed to in the U.S. And I think that, I think as someone that never broke into a top flight, and I kind of always, I made ends meet. That's how it was. And you make it to a
Hmm.
country like that, and maybe on paper the money you're making is not life changing, but it really goes a long way when cost of living is super low. And I think it's important as a player as well to feel like you're not financially constrained all the time. I think that's you know that I felt like that was my struggle as a player. Always wanted more because I felt like uh, I needed that extra bit of money to feel comfortable. And it wasn't until
Mm.
later on in my career where I got that. But how that is. It's I'm sure right now you go get a meal if you want to go see a movie, go get a drink, go get a coffee. It's nothing compared to what it'd be in the U.S., especially in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, of
So
course, no, I'm living out here, brother. I feel I feel good. It's
yeah,
no, it's
I texted you the other day, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to get a massage." And in my head, I'm like, "This guy would never have gone to go get a massage in Chicago." Like, you're definitely treating yourself like a real pro now. Before you couldn't afford the extra things to elevate your game, and I think now, I'm happy that you've been able to reach that point where now you can, especially being older, and I know you've had some unfortunate injuries. Like, you really got to take care of your body if you want to continue
Mhm.
to play at the level you're playing. And um, I know with your situation right now, you're fighting for that foreign spot, but like you said, you never know. Season ends, and maybe they do bring in somebody else, and you got to be ready for the next opportunity. And I have no doubt in my mind you're gonna prove that. But yeah, it's tough, definitely.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I think I was just having this conversation with some of the foreigners on my team, and obviously they come from different walks. And he also, a lot of them, they played in the Canadian League, they played in USL, they played in some other leagues in Europe, and so we're able to kind of have the same conversation. But even now, especially in places like Indonesia, but now these days with Cambodia.
Yeah, so you touched base a little bit on your creative side, your passion projects. For those people that don't know, you did start your own brand, SoSo Series. Um, how's that going? What was the inspiration behind that? where is it today? Where do you see it down the road? Is it something that you're still passionate about? Yeah, I remember when we were when we were living in Oakland, and obviously, I didn't realize how close you got with Idris until kind of my the end of my tenure there, end of our tenure there. But I remember you were designing the hoodie, and I was like, damn, this is fresh. This is I've never played with somebody that's had ideas like that, and I remember you launched. I think it was like you had 50 hoodies, and and I was like in my head, why is this guy doing 50? Like more people want it. I want one. Joe Schmo wants one. But I love for me like that kind of got the wheelhouse spinning. Like okay, like I see what he's trying to do, and I think the cool part about it is it's you know obviously our career ends. At some point your career ends. At some point my career ended. But this kind of experience, social experience, for example, it's something that's going to live on and it's going to continue to evolve. And I think the beauty of this is that it's not just one thing. As people, we're constantly evolving, and it's important to share your stories and continue to help the next generation of kids, of players, of anybody. Just it doesn't really matter. And obviously now you're a guy, you've got an experience living in the U.S. and Czech Republic and Malta and Cambodia, and you're able to document that. I remember when we were at house, I was always like, this guy's always got his damn camera out. Like, I chill out, dude, relax. But I know that you have stuff on that camera that you've recorded that at some point you're gonna drop, and it's like, damn, this was like a brilliant idea, and you're someone that you know you wait a bit of time, and I think that you're able to encompass just your whole experience, and I think that's beautiful. Talk to me about like the branding, the inspiration. I know, obviously, this podcast for me is new. I've never, for me, this is a bit out of my comfort zone, and admittingly, and what are some like key points to branding? Like, why has SoSo series been able to stick and have success? Yeah, for sure. And I think you and I share kind of, we're aligned in this where, we're first generation. I think you've done a really cool job of, highlighting your family, your Korean background. Obviously, for the viewers that don't know, your family owns a liquor store in Kansas City. Um, and, you've highlighted your roots, which I think is special. And I think the authenticity of that is cool. I mean, you got your video went viral. I think that's really cool to see. Talk to me about like the inspiration behind like highlighting your parents, and building your brand kind of simultaneously. Yeah. Yeah. What has been kind of your challenges navigating through the different platforms to get your content out? I know you have a pretty big following on TikTok, Instagram, but talk to me about the process of kind of building that up. But did it take time? I know there's no secret hack to growing your following, but talk to me about kind of what went into that. Yeah, no, I for sure. For sure. And I think at the end of the day, it's important to be genuine in yourself. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one as well. I mean, people want to know who you are and not who you're pretending to be at the end of the day. And I think at the end of the day, people are gonna listen to what they want to listen to, and there's so much content out there. I mean, there's so many even soccer specific podcasts, and for me, kind of going into this, I never had intention of, you know, if something comes from this, great, and if not, great too. People have been asking like, why now, and for me, I thought it was important now to just highlight. First of all, I've been fortunate enough to play in many places for many teams. I've met people from all over the world, and I think it's important to highlight that. I mean, even our relationship, you going to play in Cambodia is super cool, and we're not able to connect every day, every week, every month, but I think it's important to highlight everyone else's experience as well. So no, that's all good information to have, man. It's good like knowing going forward as well. Yeah, just like last segue for me. I think obviously World Cup is coming up. I'm excited. I'm sure all soccer fans are excited. You're excited. What are your thoughts on the North America hosting the World Cup? Yeah, no, for sure. And it's cool talking to my parents. They moved here in 91 from former Soviet Union, Ukraine, and we hosted the Chicago hosted the opening World Cup game in the '94 Olympics. And you know, obviously, I was too young to really know or be there, but to see the growth from the '94 Olympics to today is crazy. And for me, the way I see it is that we host the World Cup here, and obviously we're sharing the World Cup, and it's for me, I feel like it's important to highlight Canada and Mexico as well because uh, we do need to work together to grow the sport in North America. Obviously, Mexico has a super rich culture, but Canada and the U.S. not known for having a very rich history in soccer. That's plain and simple. But for me, I'm excited to see what the next 30 years look like in terms of growth. And um, obviously, money solves problems, and money will flow into the league, and hopefully, it ends up going in the right direction. But for me, like having more opportunities, for kids to play, for pros, obviously, we have the MLS, very, very tough to break into. The way I see it now, even the USL Championship, very hard to break into. And then there's League One, and you really don't have any other leagues. You have the Canadian Premier League. Mexico's kind of, as an American, out of the question to go to unless you're a national team player. So for me, like, can we grow the UPSL? Can we grow the NPSL? Can we grow maybe more local leagues? I mean, shout out to Andrew Swanson with Edgewater, but what they're doing, going USL League Two. I was a part of that project for 2 years, but again, kind of coming back to our podcast talk and branding. Like, can you be genuine? And I think if we can continue to build that, at the end of the day, like I thought House being in the Chicago market helped grow the Chicago Fire. You end up having, if you're able to have another pro team in a big city, you're able to challenge each other, able to challenge the status quo. So I think obviously you don't want to oversaturate and have, you know, 20 teams in a small area, but I think it's important to have, other ways to make it as a pro. And even if you don't make it as a pro, to just go and play and have fun. And at the end of the day, we play this game to have fun. I watch the game to have fun. And, that's for me, my MO as now as a retired soccer player. So talk to me about, what do you think, World Cup finals? What do you think? What do you want to see? Obviously, Messi, Ronaldo is kind of the end of an era for those guys. Uh, what do you want to see in the final? What would make you excited? Yeah. What about the player that you're most excited to watch? I mean, obviously Ronaldo, but do you have anybody else that you're maybe somebody that's a little off the radar that you're excited to watch? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. In your eyes, what is a successful World Cup campaign for the U.S.? Yeah, no, I mean, definitely getting out of the group stage is a must. I think not qualifying for the last one, now you have that bullseye on your back and you're hosting. So, one can only hope. And again, it was cool last summer. I was in Germany and I happened to catch the Croatia Spain game, caught a couple of, was able to be there for that. And it was cool walking down. Obviously, you living in Europe, you know what that's like, but you would walk down the street when games were going on and the world stops, everyone's just watching games, everyone's supporting. At the end of the day, we're all from different backgrounds and you're supporting, you know whether you're Croatian, whether you're Korean, whether you're American, you want to support your country. So I think that's the beauty of it. And I think you touched a little bit on the landscape of like the politics. I think for me, I hope that this is a moment where we're able to like come together as a world. I know we live in a weird time right now, and I try not to get caught up in all that. But for me, I think it's at the end of the day, it's such a beautiful sport. It's the most played sport in the whole world, and if we could all come together and obviously let the politicians do their thing, and you know, kind of bring all of us together, I think that's for me success. Obviously, on the field, I want to see success, but this is not a want to let everybody know we're not going to go into politics, but no, for sure. So, hey, so thank you for being on the podcast, man. It's been a pleasure. Good luck the rest of the season. Hopefully, you're back in Chicago soon. But listen. I'm rooting for you, man. You're the kind of guy that uh, you were like this close, like very, very close to retiring, and nothing was going your way, and you were persistent and you kept fighting, and now you're living out a dream. And for me, I want to see you continue to push that. And obviously I would love to see you end up in South Korea playing. I think for your family, I think that would be the most special kind of ending to your career. But keep fighting, keep grinding, and I look forward to following you. Yeah, guys. Thank you, SoSo.